The sight of Frances Swaggart stepping solemnly out of a black SUV at the memorial service for Dodie Osteen, clad in an elegant black dress, dark veil partially covering her expressionless face, Frances walked slowly toward the sanctuary at Lakewood Church, surrounded by whispers and curious glances. Her unexpected presence at Joel Osteen's mother's funeral was a moment no one could have anticipated, least of all the millions who followed the Swaggart and Osteen ministries over the years. What was she doing there? Were Frances and Dodie friends behind the scenes? Or was this all because of a quiet bond between Frances and Joel Osteen himself? As the cameras rolled and gospel choirs sang gentle hymns of comfort, viewers around the world asked the same question: why did Frances Swaggart attend Dodie Osteen's funeral? Was it a gesture of spiritual solidarity? Or was there a deeper hidden history connecting these two iconic families of American televangelism? A funeral that stopped the Christian world. Dodie Osteen wasn't just the mother of Joel Osteen. She was the spiritual matriarch of Lakewood Church, a woman who defied terminal cancer in the 1980s and went on to become a symbol of divine healing, unwavering faith, and motherly wisdom in Christian households across the globe. Her death marked the end of an era for many believers. So when news of her passing broke, it triggered a wave of mourning in evangelical circles. Pastors, gospel singers, faith healers, and even secular celebrities paid tribute online and in person. But it was the sight of Frances Swaggart, wife of televangelist Jimmy Swaggart and co-leader of Family Worship Center in Baton Rouge, that sent shockwaves through the religious community. Many couldn't believe it. For decades, the Swaggart and Osteen ministries operated in very different lanes. The Swaggarts were steeped in fiery old-school Pentecostalism, while Joel Osteen embodied the calm self-help positivity of modern megachurch Christianity. Frances, known for her stern convictions and controversial views, didn't seem like someone who would mix with the likes of Joel's Smile ministry. So what brought her to the funeral? Publicly separate, privately close? On the surface, the Swaggarts and Osteens have had little interaction. There are no known joint sermons, ministry events, or interviews linking Frances to Dodie. Yet insiders have hinted for years that the women may have developed a private friendship unknown to the public. One former Family Worship Center staffer, speaking under condition of anonymity, revealed that Frances used to mention Dodie in private meetings. She respected her, the source said. Frances would say things like, "Dodie is a woman of real strength, not afraid to pray through pain." This revelation suggests that the two women, though miles apart in style and doctrine, may have found common ground in their shared experience, the loneliness of being a ministry matriarch. Both Frances and Dodie spent decades in the shadows, and sometimes the spotlight, of powerful preacher husbands. Both endured personal and public struggles. Both knew what it meant to be scrutinized, silenced, and spiritualized by the very institutions they helped build. A quiet phone friendship? Rumors have circulated that the two women had a long-standing phone relationship, mostly spiritual check-ins, prayer calls, and the occasional encouragement. They weren't best friends in the way the world defines it, said a retired Lakewood volunteer who once managed Dodie's event calendar. But they had a bond. They would call each other during tough times, especially when one of their husbands was facing criticism. If true, that bond would explain Frances's deeply respectful presence at Dodie's funeral. Unlike other attendees who came for Joel or for Lakewood Church, Frances sat quietly, tears in her eyes, her head bowed through the entire service. She wasn't there for a headline. She was mourning someone who perhaps quietly had once stood by her. Joel and Frances, a connection no one talked about. Some now speculate that Frances' presence may not have been solely about Dodie. It may have been about Joel as well. There have been whispers for years about private conversations between Frances and Joel Osteen, especially during times when both their ministries faced scandal or media pressure. One former televangelism network producer claimed that Frances had once defended Joel during a heated board meeting. She said, "That boy's smile may be big, but his cross is heavy. Don't be fooled." It shocked everyone. Despite their outward differences, style, doctrine, denomination, Frances Swaggart and Dodie Osteen shared an unspoken language that only few women in the world could truly understand. Both were wives of famous preachers. Both endured years of emotional and spiritual warfare behind the scenes. Both had to watch their husbands, and later their children, face media attacks, church divisions, and sometimes public humiliation. That kind of pressure either breaks a woman or binds her to others who've walked through the same fire. It was in that fire, insiders say, that Frances and Dodie found their private alliance. Not the type of bond celebrated on platforms or Instagram feeds, but the kind rooted in prayers whispered at 2 a.m., scriptures, passed quietly over the phone, and maybe even tears shed over the same pain, betrayal, judgment, and the burden of expectations. Dodie, while always appearing composed and angelic in public, had faced cancer, criticism, and the challenge of raising a son, Joel, into a national spiritual figure without letting him become crushed under his father's legacy. Frances, on the other hand, was the steel backbone behind Jimmy Swaggart's rise and fall, standing by him through scandals that rocked the Christian world, often hated more than he was. Their pain may have been different in detail, but identical in depth. And sometimes pain is the only introduction two women need. Hidden letters? The rumor no one denied. After Dodie's passing, a rumor began circulating through certain corners of the Christian community that Frances Swaggart had written Dodie private letters over the years. Not emails, not text messages, but handwritten notes, filled with Bible verses, spiritual encouragement, and deep questions about the burdens of being a woman in ministry. While neither family has confirmed the letters exist, a former Lakewood prayer volunteer swore she once saw a note in Dodie's journal, signed simply, FS. It said something like, "We may not walk the same path, but we carry the same cross. I see you. FS." Could these letters explain the emotional weight Frances carried at the funeral? Was she there not just as a public figure, but as someone grieving a real friend, perhaps the only woman who truly understood her? The tension in the room, not everyone was happy to see her. While many fans online applauded Frances Swaggart's presence as a beautiful act of Christian unity, others, especially longtime Lakewood members, were surprised, confused, even uncomfortable. One attendee shared anonymously, "There was a buzz the moment Frances walked in. People started whispering, 'What's she doing here?' You could feel the tension." Another said, "It felt like two worlds colliding. Lakewood's soft, smiling culture versus the Swaggart brand of fiery preaching. Nobody expected to see her there. But she came anyway." That's the part that made people stop and think, she came anyway. Uninvited or not, welcome or not, Frances showed up. Which means, this wasn't about PR. It wasn't a photo op. This was about something personal, something sacred, something deeper than ministry politics. Joel's reaction, a nod, a tear, and a mystery. Eyewitnesses confirmed that Joel Osteen, upon seeing Frances Swaggart seated a few rows from the front, nodded subtly. No smile, no words exchanged, just a quiet acknowledgement. Then, during the tribute montage to his mother, a single tear slid down Joel's cheek. Some thought it was for Dodie. Others believed it was a silent thank you to Frances, for showing up when few others from the old guard did. Sources close to Joel claim he's long respected Frances privately. One former church elder recalls a moment backstage in 2014 when Joel said, "She's strong. Not like me. I smile through storms. She walks through fire and doesn't blink." That single quote might explain everything. Behind the megawatt smile, Joel Osteen may feel deeply connected to Frances Swaggart in a way he's never made public. Perhaps because she reminds him of his mother, or perhaps because she represents the kind of strength he feels he doesn't have. A spiritual motherhood few understood. In many ways, Frances and Dodie both became spiritual mothers to millions of believers. While Joel's ministry often featured Dodie on stage, praying over the sick, Frances remained more in the background, running the Swaggart empire with strategic precision, protecting Jimmy's image, defending Dodie Swaggart's pulpit position, and keeping the family worship center afloat during massive waves of criticism. Despite her rigid public persona, Frances has always carried the burden of emotional resilience. No matter what personal tragedy hit, be it Jimmy's scandal, Dodie's divorce rumors, or ministry lawsuits, she never wavered. She never cried in front of a camera. She never broke down on live TV. And maybe that's why she came to Dodie's funeral. Not to say goodbye to a friend, but to grieve in a place where she could finally let her guard down. Was this the beginning of a new alliance? Many are now wondering if Frances Swaggart's appearance at the funeral marks the beginning of something new, a long overdue softening between the once divided Christian camps of America. Could Joel Osteen, the smiling ambassador of grace, and Frances Swaggart, the Iron Lady of Judgment, begin to bridge the theological gap between their audiences? No formal statements have been made, no partnerships announced, but some believers have started calling for a unity conference, a single event where leaders from opposite ends of the Christian spectrum come together. And yes, Frances and Joel's names are at the top of the prayer list. Public reaction, divided, emotional, and viral. The internet didn't stay quiet. On Twitter, hashtags like #Frances at Lakewood and #UnexpectedGrief began trending within hours. TikTok clips of Frances walking into the church silently gathered over 2 million views in 24 hours. YouTube channels lit up with analysis, conspiracy, and fan speculation. Some praised her bravery. Others accused her of using the funeral for attention. But one comment stood out among the noise. Only a woman who knows real loss would travel across states, uninvited, to sit in silence for another woman's death. That's not pride. That's honor. In the end, the question still lingers. Why was Frances Swaggart at Joel Osteen's mother's funeral? Was it friendship, respect, a silent spiritual alliance? Or maybe, just maybe, it was about honoring the only other woman who knew what it meant to survive the world of men, ministry, and media. Dodie Osteen left behind a legacy of healing, faith, and grace. Frances Swaggart, often misunderstood, sometimes feared, showed up to say goodbye not just to a friend, but perhaps to the last person who truly understood her calling. As Frances stepped back into the car, away from the crowds and cameras, she didn't wave, she didn't smile, she simply whispered something to herself and closed the door. A quiet goodbye, heavy with more meaning than words could carry.